welcome and thank you for Don Neal filling the room for this MPC Guest Author Series event featuring Christopher Moore.
But you guys, when we do the Q&A, if you want to ask me about the whole professional aspect of you're all going to say, well, how come there aren't any movies? And I'll be, because I don't know. But that first book sold as a film before it sold as a book. I was waiting tables that night, and at the Pasta Factory in Harmony, and this agent in Hollywood who had sort of been brought on board by a friend of mine who just, my roommate's friend from LA, calls and says, Disney wants to buy your book for $350,000, and they want an answer by 7:30. And I said, I can't talk to you. I have garlic bread due on table 15. I was just so out of context. It was just so out of context, And so I'm trying to, we're slammed. I'm in the weeds, and I'm trying to keep my section. And there's a guy who's calling from Hollywood, going, "Yeah, well, we're going to give you 350." And so he calls back, and he goes, "No, they're really serious. 8 o'clock." $350,000, or the offer goes away because they're afraid it's going to go to auction tomorrow and they're not going to it's going to cost them too much money. And I said, "Tell them you're authorized." This is me. I'm a waiter. I'm a waiter. The biggest deal I've ever negotiated that I can think of is not at all. Not at all. I don't even get, when I buy a car. I can't negotiate. Anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I was the only guy at the bazaars in Israel where the guy would say, $50, I'm like, fine, and he's like, what about your children? I'm the worst haggler in the world. But I go, tell them you're authorized to close at $400,000 and you couldn't get hold of me, because this is before cell phones, right? And I mean, they existed, but they were like, size of a Volvo. And so he goes, "Well, they won't believe that." And I go, "Well, I gotta go. Seriously, I've got to take an order." So I hang up on him. So I'm, and I hand my apron to a bus girl, and I go, "You're promoted." And because I was freaked out, and he calls back and he goes, "We accepted $400,000." I go, "What did you tell him?" He said, "I told him that I was authorized to close at $400,000 and I couldn't get hold of you." And I'm like, "What am I paying you for?" So that started me being a professional author. But I still didn't know anything. I mean, the thing about being a novelist, and you'll see this in action, is that you have this really wide base of knowledge that's very, very shallow. You never get the bonus question. So you really only have two things you can do with that, is just smoke people at Home Jeopardy. Just sit smugly in the living room going, "I would have had that one." Mesopotamia, you idiot! Or write novels, because that's the level. You don't need the next bonus level question to write novels. So that's what I did. But I didn't really know anything, and I couldn't write another book. I didn't want to write the same book over and over again. So when I was doing my research on practical demon keeping, I kept seeing, showing up in my research, along with demon trickster. And a trickster was sort of a god that existed just to bring irony to the world. And I thought, well, that would be a cool thing to write a book about. And I researched a little bit, and I decided upon Coyote, the Native American god Coyote, who happens to be in a lot of different tribes. As a lot of Native American deities are tribe specific, but Coyote is across the plains and the Pacific Northwest and so forth. So I decided Coyote, and this is how general I was in how I was going to. I didn't have to do research, like on-site research. I mean, when I was researching Camry, I was like, I think I'm going to go to the diner and have coffee. That'll be tax deductible because it's research. So I had a friend who was working for a writer in Livingston, Montana. And she was the sister of the head waitress at the place where I was waiting tables when I got the phone call. And I went, "Oh, there's Indians in Montana. I'll drive up there." That was like how seriously about how much I knew about where I was going. I was like, I should go talk to an Indian. I actually it happened. I was driving across Washington State, and there was a guy hitchhiking, and you know, he was clearly a Native American guy. And I was like, pulled up in my new Nissan 300ZX that I bought with my Disney money, and I was like, do you need a ride? He goes, yeah. And I go, where are you going? He goes, Spokane. We were like just outside of Tacoma, so it's like 300 miles. And I was like, up driving along. So, what's it like being Indian? Do you like being an Indian? Have you been an Indian before? This guy was like, he was thinking, I so wish this was just one of those guys that kidnaps you and cuts your body. I was in Montana like the whole summer, and that was the last Indian I actually saw. But I hung out with a lot of writers and stuff in Livingston, and then I went home, and I got a call from a guy who said, oh, hey, I'm a photographer. I work for the Smithsonian, and I'm going to go to, and I have relationships with the Crow Indians and the Blackfeet and the Cheyenne, and I'm going to go this fall to the reservations, and would you like to go with me? Yes. So I flew to Montana, and this guy picked me up in this piece of shit Jeep truck pulling an Airstream trailer. And he was about 375 pounds and about 5'9". And wearing, you know, like a sweatsuit and had like big giant glasses and a toque pulled down and hair sticking out, and this is the thing that's, you know, other than the truck was rusted out all the way around, the thing that tipped me off was there was a bow, like a hunting bow, on the rack in the back of the truck. And he says, I have to stop at Kmart and get a deer license and shoot the deer off my back porch. I borrowed a bow from a guy. And I'm like, he may not work for the Smithsonian. As it turned out, he did not. And so I bought new brakes for his truck and his trailer, and we ended up going to the Crow Reservation. As it turned out, he did know people there, but I wasn't getting anywhere with my research. I needed a holy grail. You know, I saw what life on the reservation was like, but I was like, just not getting there. And we kept going to the Crow public relations guy named Dale Kindness. And the Crow agency sort of tribal headquarters looks like an elementary school building put up in like 1968. It's like bricks and glass and very not Indian looking. And so they're really sort of torn. This is among a lot of Native Americans between, this is, you know, Crow Agency is right by Little Bighorn, where the Battle of Little Bighorn National Battlefield is. And used to be Custer National Battlefield, and the Indians went, oh, fuck no. We won that one. You're not putting that guy's name on it, so now it's Little Bighorn National Battlefield. But they're conflicted between, we need tourism to support, this was before they had a casino on the res, but we kind of hate white people. And totally understandable. And the way that Dale Kindness, the head of PR for the Crow tribe, would manifest this was, one day he would be this sort of taciturn jerk, and the next day he was like your best friend and insurance salesman. And you just didn't know what you were going to run into. So about I think the fifth or sixth day, I went to Cal, the guy who was driving the rusted out truck, and I went to his office, and Dale said, we're all going to go to lunch and have burgers at Crow Agency, which is a tiny, tiny little town. And he met his girlfriend there, and she had brought her father, who was this guy who was probably in his 70s. And we all order burgers at the takeout place, and we're sitting at a picnic table in this little park, and we're eating burgers. And Dale is he's in one of his good Indian days, and we love everybody days, and so he's being very sort of effusive about the problems that the Crow people will face, and their traditions, and preserving them, and all of it, you know, vital to what I was going to write about. But also, he was being the good guy that day. And then this old guy would go, I died 4 times. and Dale and his girlfriend would be like, And so, one of the problems is our language doesn't have a word for VCR or computer, and he'd start going on, and then the old guy would go, and I could speak all languages. And they would just kind of let it settle down, and then he'd tell me a little bit more about the culture and the problems that they were facing with diabetes on the reservation, and then the old guy would go, and I could bust a tumor, tumor size of a grapefruit. I just breathe on it and I could bust a tumor. And I was like, okay. And Dale and his girlfriend were looking very, very embarrassed about the whole thing. So we finished our burgers and we were drinking our Cokes and we were all smoking as you do on the reservations, or as you did in 1991 or whenever. And I kept offering smokes to the old guy, because you do. And we'd all sat there and we smoked, and the old guy said some crazy shit as the sort of in that spiritual Tourette's thing that he was doing, and he would be going, they kept the bundle carriers. There was 4 of us in the bundle carriers. If they all got together, then if they with the arrow bundles, then they would be immortal. And the tribe couldn't let that happen. And and Dale is trying to talk demographics, and it's like, well, if we could just get the kids to eat less sugar. So what happened is as we get ready to leave, the old guy, his name was Hartford Stops. I said, I offered him another smoke, and I said, you could just keep the pack. And he said, you must come to my house for a sweat. Coyote medicine working, the trickster working. It turns out that among the Crow, tobacco is a sacred gift. And by me giving him tobacco, he owed me. And we went to his house and he held a sweat for us. And I want to just let you know, if you go to a sweat, aside from the caution of don't die, which is a big thing among people, try to avoid going there with a 350-pound white guy. Do not want to see that guy naked and sweaty. I'm pretty much traumatized by that. And Hartford gave me talked about the arrow bundles and how that they basically, if they came together, they could make someone immortal. And the Crow believed this as part of their religion. And in the early part of the 20th century, that really did happen. They wouldn't let there were 4 arrow bundles, and he said, and one of them's in the Smithsonian now, so we're okay. If the arrow bundles ever came together, whoever had the arrow bundles would become all powerful. It sounds like you could really do an awesome comic book about it. And make Coyote that kind of, like Thor or something. And, you shouldn't have brought the 4 arrow bundles together. So that happened, and I went home and I wrote Coyote Blue, and it was all my holy grail for the book, although it's all about bringing Coyote into the modern world, was the arrow bundles. And it all happened simply because I was like, a chain smoker. So that's the trickster.